Hey, what's going on everybody? Coach Troy here from Inspired Sudbury. Today we're going to talk about selecting your optimal box jump height when you're doing plyometrics. Alright everybody, so why it's important to select an optimal height for your box for the box jumps is that a lot of times we see so many people end up selecting a box that's way too high, and that's going to create a lot of movement faults, especially in the landings. You'll see like a valgus knee, that's where the knees kind of drop in like that. We wouldn't notice that if they just selected a better box, and we're going to show you how to do that today. Right, so what we want to touch on first is how important that box jumps can be when it comes to development. Now, what using boxes do, as you can see here by my amazing artwork, is that it's going to take a lot of the impact off of the joints, and especially in younger athletes, or when you've got to do a lot of jumps, so a lot of jump volume in certain times of your training. So instead of jumping up and coming all the way back down the floor and jumping your highest, we can get you to just cut the landing a little bit shorter than hitting the floor. All right, so just because someone's going to jump really high, it's not going to change their jump height. If they're jumping as high as they can, isn't going to change no matter what box they use. So we want to get everyone to understand is that it's not the height of the box, but it's the height of your hip. That's really going to matter how high you're coming up off the ground. And we can use the point of the hip. That's why you can see I've got it circled here on both our same athletes that's jumping just as high, but they're using different heights of boxes. So we can find that optimal box height, and we're going to show you how to do that with our next clip. All right, we're going to talk about 6 different things that are going to contribute to you having a really good jump. Number 1 is going to be your foot. So if your foot isn't stable, you're going to take off on a really poor angle and probably land ineffectively. If there's a bad takeoff, there's probably going to be a bad landing. All right, next we're going to talk about ankle mobility. If you don't have the ankle mobility to take off, or in particular to land correctly, that's going to send off all kinds of different chain of events that are going to put you in a really poor position and maybe contribute to either an acute landing injury, so that means like a blown ACL or a rolled ankle, or repetitive stress of not landing correctly. The next on our chain of events is having a stable knee. So super important. We notice this a lot, especially in athletes maybe that are younger or people that aren't ready to jump, so just don't have the strength to really make that happen. There's a lot of force that happens in a landing. So we want to make sure that the athlete, number 1, is strong enough for the takeoff and also for the landing. So we see a lot of times with knees turning valgus, so kind of like diving in. On a landing, there's a lot of times we'll see that's a mechanism for a bad ACL injury, very acute as well, so like a blown ACL or also repetitive stress. You can notice it. And take a look the next time you're watching any sport with jumping in it, and you'll see if you see those knees dipping in, they either started in a bad position or they're just not strong enough to do that yet. The next in our chain, we're going to talk about hip mobility. This is really valuable for everybody. Most people don't really have the hip mobility to do, whether it's squat correctly because we sit for too long every day, but when it comes to athletics, we have to have the hip mobility to make sure that we're not just going to topple over and go top heavy when we're going to land. If we're just talking about a box jump, we want to make sure that we have the hip mobility to sink into that landing, so again, we're not setting off any other poor chain of events. All right, next we're going to talk about stable lumbar spine. We want to make sure that the back, especially the lower back, is going to be strong enough to maintain the forces that you're going to be putting into it when it comes to jumping. To have that strong back so you don't get that jarring motion when you land, so you're strong enough to stay in a better position, and maybe you don't land in the best position, but if you're a little bit stronger, you more likely won't fall into a really poor position and you can correct yourself a lot better. All right, next we're going to talk about thoracic spine mobility. I know it sounds kind of weird to have like a mobile spine, but if you don't have that position for your back to stay in a good position, again, we talked about the stability of that lumbar spine. Well, these work hand in hand. We have to make sure that, number 1, that lumbar spine is going to be stable enough to take those forces. And then also the thoracic spine is going to be mobile enough, not too mobile, to make sure that we can land in a really good position, even if we rotate a little. And in selecting a proper height of a box, it's really important to make sure that it's not too high. The reason for that is you're going to put one of these links in that chain of events at risk. So we can talk about foot stability. If you're taking off for a box that's too high, you're probably going to put yourself at risk even just from the takeoff. And then the landing might be off, in particular with the ankle we can kind of go down the list here, guys, and talk about how stable the knee is. We're going to see that knee drop or even kind of kick out sometimes. That mobile hip, if your hip isn't mobile enough to land on a box that's too high for you to land into a deep squat, you're going to end up falling forward, and we can see that almost in a skipping motion or a falling forward motion. That lumbar spine, that's where you can really almost see that impact travel through someone when they hit a box that's too high or a jump that's really out of their comfort zone. And that thoracic spine, they're going to have to really fold over, as you can see in my beautiful artwork here, that they're going to have to really roll into that just to try to get enough depth. Your body is going to make you get into these really poor positions so you can land just whatever jump that you're trying to accomplish. All right, guys, so really important, as we talked about, hip height is your biggest, most important tool when we're talking about the height of the box that you're going to select. So as you can see here, the hip height doesn't change at all. It's really, really valuable to understand that. Just because the box is really tall up there, you can get up there. We want to make sure that the hip height is what's going to manage how high the box is going to be that you're going to jump on. So as you can see here, just because someone's jumping onto a higher box doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually jumping higher. All right, guys, I hope you can better select a box height for your jumps by really seeing how valuable these 6 pieces to the jump puzzle really, really are. If you have any questions or comments on maybe the box height that you're using now, or maybe you're just afraid to do box jumps, don't be afraid to hit us down below, and we're happy to help you out. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you again soon.